I took away is that the ECB is really trying hard to be data dependent. So we didn't get the one thing that we wanted to find out, which is what's going to happen to interest rates in September. So we didn't get any definite signals from the ECB, from the president. Yesterday, she said it could be a hike, it could be a pause. We tried several times to get her to answer that question, but she just wouldn't have it. And what was interesting that she described inflation as still too high. The outlook is it will stay there for too long. So they are clearly not comfortable yet with what they see, but they have certain indications that inflation is now coming down. Maybe even a bit faster than expected. And also interesting is that they now see policy tightening. So those 8 previous interest rate hikes and the one yesterday, obviously adding to that. They see them reaching and transmitting into the economy, into financing conditions. Those have deteriorated quite badly. Demand for loans is down. So in that sense, they're really seeing progress now.
Okay, in terms of the CPI readings that we get today then on the inflation point, France, Germany and Spain due out today, what are you going to be looking out for, Jana?
Yeah, so the headline figures in Germany and Spain are expected to slow. The core rates is what really matters. So what we're going to look at is the drivers of inflation, and they are changing according to Christine Lagarde. So external sources, energy, food, those are easing, and we've been seeing that for a while now. Inflation data, domestic price pressures on the other hand are going strong. So the services components, those that are driven by wage deals. So we'll really drill into the data as much as it becomes available. Germany obviously only is the preliminary report, so we won't get all the details that we want, but as much as they're available, we will be looking at those domestic drivers of inflation and see if there is any easing inside.
Okay, Jana, we'll be bringing you those figures on the programme later, but for now, Jana Randa, our ECB reporter, thank you so much for joining us on the programme this morning.
Now we get second quarter results from NatWest at 7 a.m. London time, and the earnings statement will be scoured for any details about the future leadership of the bank. This after the boss of Coutts, Peter Flamel, resigned over the Nigel Farage account closure controversy, which led also to the resignation of CEO Alison Rose earlier this week. Our finance reporter Will Shaw joins us now. Of course, you've tracked every twist in this story. What are we expecting from the results today?
So first of all, estimates compiled by Bloomberg suggest that NatWest is looking at pre-tax profits of around £1.45 billion versus about £1.4 billion a year ago, so slightly higher if that proves to be correct. Obviously, that's not what people are really interested in. What people really want to know about is what's going on with the Nigel Farage affair. This is the first time that NatWest will have spoken directly to journalists or the public about what's going on. Up until now, it's just been brief statements pushed out, announcing that people are staying or leaving. This will be the first time we probably get to see Paul Thwaite, the interim CEO. No, people don't really know what he's like, so they'll be looking for indications of who he is, what he's done elsewhere in his career. And people will be wanting to know what NatWest is planning to do to try and restore trust after what's happened.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be the focus. I mean, after Peter Flavel resigning, Alison Rose are going to be the CEO as well. Is there still pressure on Howard Davies, and how significant is that as chairman?
I think there's very mixed messages about Howard Davies at the moment. So Andrew Griffith, the Treasury Secretary, told Bloomberg earlier in the week that Davies ought to stay. Rishi Sunak, however, after that, declined to give Howard Davies his full backing. It's a very difficult question for the government, who've got a 39% stake in NatWest. On the one hand, Howard Davies is very experienced. He represents stability. They've lost the CEO of NatWest. They've lost the CEO of Coutts. Can they cope with losing another one? At the same time, he is ultimately responsible for standards, and there's obviously been a really serious failing in standards at the bank. When I spoke to Nigel Farage yesterday, he was saying he'd be surprised if Howard Davies was still in his position by the end of today.
End of today, okay. How damaged is NatWest, though, after this week? I mean, as you say, the issue around standards, how widespread is this sort of worry and the reputational damage for NatWest?
I think it's very damaged. First of all, you have the breach of privacy, which is serious in itself. But I think what really matters is Alison Rose admitting that she went out to the BBC and briefed them, breaching confidentiality rules about a customer's accounts, and gave, at best, incomplete information to the British Broadcasting Corporation. There've then been a series of chaotic communications from the bank during this week. No one's really known what's happening next. They might argue, NatWest might argue, that the whole affair underscores their progressive values, that might help them attract younger customers and staff. But ultimately, I think a lot of people feel the whole incident has left a bad taste in their mouths.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the programme this morning. The details of that our finance reporter will show. We will have those first half results from NatWest for you at 7 a.m. on the programme, and we'll have a check on the markets for you next.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Having lost control of inflation, the central banks will see the safest course for them is one of overkill.
To re-weaponize food in a world where there are massive food shortages and people are dying of starvation, I think the Russian action is reprehensible.
This is a new normal because climate crisis is here.
Inflation continues to decline, but is still expected to remain too high for too long.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on Bloomberg Radio.
And it's 6:30 a.m. here in London. A very good morning. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Okay, watching the reaction then in markets to Japan, the tweet to yield curve control from the BOJ. We're expecting, of course, at 7:30, the BOJ press conference that's going to be closely watched. The Japanese yen this morning, 0.4%, and yields also moving significantly in terms of 10-year yields up as much as 13 basis points for Japanese JGBs. Also plenty of earnings out this morning. Oil looks like it's heading for a weekly gain, although actually down this morning 0.5%, and gold below $2,000 this morning. Stock futures are in the red though for Europe. US stocks 50 futures are down 0.3%, Stephen.
And in the slew of economic data we're going to get across Europe this morning, we have the first print of French GDP for the second quarter coming in much stronger than had been expected, 0.5% in the quarter-on-quarter figure. Year-on-year growth, the estimate had just been for 0.1%. That's the first of a range of prints we're getting out this morning. Let's get to our top stories. The Bank of Japan has changed its yield curve controls in a surprise move that sent markets swinging. The central bank kept its target for 10-year yields at 0, but expanded the range that yields could move up to 1%. Bloomberg's chief rates correspondent Garfield Reynolds says there are still a lot of questions about how the curve will be policed.
How that's going to work, how they decide it, whether it means they will step in anytime they think yields are moving too sharply higher or inappropriately higher. It kind of becomes more akin to what we've seen on occasions with the currency market intervention from Japan when it's decided that the yen was getting too weak or was getting too weak too fast. So that's adding a lot of uncertainty about what this is going to mean. There's a lot of attention on what Ueda is going to say in his press conference.
That's our chief rates correspondent Garfield Reynolds. That press conference happening at 7:30 a.m. London time.
Now, Christine Lagarde sees a fading economic outlook for the euro area. The European Central Bank raised interest rates yesterday for a 9th time in a row, but Lagarde says that September's decision is still undecided.
We have an open mind as to what the decisions will be in September and in subsequent meetings, because this determination based on data might vary from one month to the other.
ECB President Christine Lagarde speaking. A report out this week from the central bank showed demand for loans from companies also plunged by the most on record in the second quarter.
The Adani Group is looking to borrow as much as $750 million to refinance debt taken on for its purchase of Ambuja Cements last year. Adani New Industries has raised $394 million from Barclays and Deutsche Bank for a solar panel project. These efforts signal a restoration of investor confidence after US short seller Hindenburg accused India's Adani Group of corporate wrongdoing in January, the group denying those allegations.
Wall Street's main regulator is unveiling proposals to restrict brokerages and money managers that use artificial intelligence to interact with clients. The chair of the SEC, Gary Gensler, says that conflicts of interest can arise when financial firms adopt the technology.
What we're trying to do is make sure that the technology aligns with that standard, that the technology that can predict about each and every one of us so much about how we might react to a little behavioral prompt or a little nudge, how we might react, that they're putting our interest as an investor in the right place and not putting themselves ahead of it.
Gary Gensler there speaking to Bloomberg in an exclusive interview. It wasn't the only big change announced though. The SEC also approved a plan requiring companies to disclose significant cybersecurity breaches.
So those are our top stories on the programme this morning. Coming up next on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, why Lebanon is struggling to find a new central bank governor to handle the country's massive financial challenges, as the man who's held the role for 30 years is set to step down. Our reporter Dana Creation brings us the details next. This is Bloomberg.
Get the news you need to start your day in just 15 minutes.
The Federal Reserve taking rates to the highest level in 22 years.
We have another onslaught of earnings out today. Wake up with Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition. The record-smashing heat wave across the U.S. continues. Wild night at baseball, 12 teams scored 10 or more runs. Available now on your podcast feed. Each weekday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern. We'll continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting. Subscribe to Bloomberg Daybreak, U.S. edition today on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
I felt like I was in jail every day. When I was going to work, I'm like, I gotta get out of here.
My executive order calls on the FTC to ban or limit non-compete agreements.
This season on Uncommon Law, we're exploring one of the most expansive Federal Trade Commission proposals in modern history, a nationwide ban on non-compete clauses.
Non-compete clauses can really restrict competition.
We'll talk to workers who were desperate to take new jobs in their industry, only to be blocked by threat of a lawsuit.
I remember getting served with cease and desist and thinking that this can't be fair. How can she get away with this?
And we'll talk to the business owners who say they depend on these clauses to keep their companies afloat.
When you enter into an agreement, there are rules.
Join us as we explore the far-reaching implications. Yeah. Come on in.
My brother got life.
A veteran in need. Visit willyouseeonevet.org to learn more. That's willyouseeonevet.org.
Remember this well. Music just doesn't get better than this. Here we go again. Turn it up! On Magic 102.3 and 92.7.
The real sound of the DMV.
This new day, coming up in the next hour, solo piano music by Mozart.
I'd like unanimous consent to enter into the record a couple of articles. The first is a gender-affirming surgeon speaks at Jacobs School event dated June 9th, 2023.
Okay.
And that article, we saw a clip earlier of Dr. Blair Peters. And had Dr. Peters actually been here, he could have helped dispel some myths. In fact, in the article, you'll find Dr. Peters saying very explicitly, transgender kids do not get surgery, Dr. Peters said, directly refuting a key talking point for those trafficking in anti-trans rhetoric. The other article I'd like to enter, I'd like unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter into the record is an article entitled, "I don't want to live in this state of terror anymore. Some families with trans children are leaving Texas." If I could have unanimous consent to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Minter and Ms. Reynolds, thank you for being here to dispel some of these myths and to fight back against this effort to keep Americans on this treadmill of anger and rage. I'd also, Ms. Reynolds, I want to apologize to you. One of my Republican colleagues made some really demeaning and belittling comments meant to humiliate and minimize the parents of trans children by comparing the very difficult, painful journey and conversation with children about transitioning to allowing kids to eat ice cream all day, every day. So I want to apologize on behalf of what happened. And I want to congratulate you for your courage to speak on behalf of your child and other children. I'd like to ask you, Ms. Reynolds, I entered into the record this article about Texas, and Texas has been a very hostile state to vulnerable populations. Can you tell me, and I listened very carefully to your journey, but can you tell us what happens when the government marshals all of its energy and resources to harm families like yours?
It's absolutely terrorizing, is what it does. It's very, it creates another level of stress, and I really can't even understate that, overstate that. It's terrorizing. It really is. It's extremely stressful. It's extremely distracting. It produces all kinds of fear. I would have left Texas already if that were something that was financially feasible for my family, and it's not. My career is in Texas. My children are established there. They have their friends. They have their schools. They're there. We're here. And but because of this, I would have been, a political refugee to another state if I could afford to do that. So we have no choice but to try to at least tell our story and see if, anybody can hear sort of something a little more rational, something a little more like what families like mine are experiencing.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reynolds. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, if Congress really wanted to protect children, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would have joined with us in passing robust, comprehensive gun violence prevention legislation that would truly protect children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady, that round of questioning by Veronica Escobar of Texas. She called on Miriam Reynolds, the mother of a transgender child.
And the chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Carroll. I yield back to the chair.